This is Chief Holtman. Your questions are for Section 107, First Aid and Field Sanitation Fundamentals. We will begin. What are the 9 general first aid rules? How long before irreversible brain damage can occur? What is triage? What are the 2 types of triage? Explain each one. What are the classes of treatment for tactical triage? Explain each one. What are the classes of treatment for non-tactical triage? Explain each one. What are the 2 formal processes of conducting a field assessment? What is the A, B, C, D, and E's of conducting a primary survey? The primary survey should be conducted within how long from arriving on scene? What are the signs and symptoms of shock? What is the pulse rate of hemorrhagic shock? What is the pulse rate of neurogenic shock? What are the 3 ways to control hemorrhage? How many pressure points are on each side of the body? What can you use for a tourniquet? What can you not use for a tourniquet? What is the proper treatment for a head wound? What is the proper treatment for a facial wound? What is the proper treatment for a sucking chest wound? What is the proper treatment for abdominal wounds? What is the difference between an open and closed fracture? How do you splint a forearm fracture? How do you splint a thigh fracture? How do you splint a lower leg fracture? How do you splint a clavicle fracture? How do you splint a rib fracture? How many types of burns are there? Please list them all. What are the signs and symptoms of first-degree burns? What are the signs and symptoms of second-degree burns? What are the signs and symptoms of third-degree burns? What are the types of heat injuries? What are the signs and symptoms of heat cramps? What are the signs and symptoms of heat exhaustion? What are the signs and symptoms of heat stroke? What are the types of cold injuries? What are the signs and symptoms of hypothermia? What are the signs and symptoms of immersion foot? What are the signs and symptoms of frostbite? What are the signs and symptoms of superficial frostbite? What are the signs and symptoms of deep frostbite? List the 3 ways to purify water. Explain how to purify water using iodine tablets for a 1-quart canteen. Explain how to purify water using iodine tablets for a 2-quart canteen. Explain how to purify water using calcium hypochlorite. Explain how to purify water by boiling. What are the dimensions of a cat hole? What are the dimensions of a straddle trench? List the 6 types of carries that can be used for carrying a casualty. Explain how to improvise a stretcher with a poncho and poles. This concludes Section 107, First Aid and Field Sanitation Fundamentals.